yesterday afternoon with my sponsor briefly, and Cam had asked me to speak yesterday and gave me the topic um, of New Hope, and my sponsor thought that I should talk about Star Wars, but I'm gonna not do that. Would have been more appropriate if it was May 4th today. It's not. Anyway, I'm gonna read a paragraph out of Living Clean from the section. I think it's in the first chapter, the section titled "A Vision of Hope." It's not recovery that is painful. Resistance to it is what hurts. When we step away from our recovery and act against our beliefs, that hurts. Using is about distortion. We are drawn to things that distort our perception, from drug use to resentment. Sanity is living in harmony with reality. When we are spiritually awake, we are willing to see clearly. We recognize the habits of mind that lead us back to the same feelings over and over, regardless of what's happening around us. Until we stamp it with the name excitement or fear, the feeling can be identical. Making a choice in how we describe our experience gives us a choice in how we experience our lives. Um, I don't know. That paragraph. I have the whole thing highlighted in my phone in that book, and that's anytime we've read that section, that paragraph always jumps out at me. And I've done a lot better in my recovery than I'm doing right now in the way I label things about me and how I feel and what I'm doing. And when I tend to drift away a little bit from whatever in recovery, I tend to label things much more negatively. And every time I read this, it gives me hope that I can change the way I look at things and the way I perceive things and the way my life goes. I can change that anytime I want to. Uh, when I first got here, the hope that I had was that I just wouldn't feel the way I felt when I got here, and I didn't have many or really probably any positive labels for anything that I felt at that time, and I just wanted that to stop. And when I first got to NA, I didn't think that would be able to include staying clean. Um, I was pretty sure there was some kind of combination of this, that, and the other thing that I could do and not feel that way, but still get high. Um, and it took a few years for me to get to the point where really not using was the only suggestion I hadn't taken. And and then when I looked at things a little clearer, I saw that I'd done some you know some step work, but more because that's what I thought I had to do, not because I wanted to do it, and that I had any hope or anything that it would help anything. Um, and so at that point, I changed and changed the way I looked at things, and started doing all the suggestions that people gave me. Um, and I even understood that from listening to people that their suggestions may not be what I need to do and may not work. And when I come up against a suggestion on something that I needed help with and it didn't work, I'd go back and I'd say that didn't work. Now what? Um, Through that repetition of doing all that stuff and going to meetings and talking to my sponsor and working steps and talking to other addicts, the hope that I had when I first got here changed, um, from just not wanting to feel the way that I had felt to somewhere in the back of my mind having hope and a little bit of belief that I could get better and do things differently and live my life differently. Um, in the years that I've been clean, there's been a number of times that I've gone even a couple of years with really the only meeting I would get to would be the one on my clean time anniversary, so I could brag about all the clean time I have. And there were many times for many months and even years at a time that I had a sponsor, pretty much so that if somebody asked me if I had a sponsor, I could say yes. Um, and didn't use my sponsor, didn't go to meetings, didn't work on myself, and things would get very dark for me in those times. And somewhere, somehow, in those times, I always end up finding something that reminds me that I don't have to hope just to get through life and not hurt today. I can hope to get better and change and do things that are different and affect me differently. And I can look at the way I label my life and my actions, and that really, when I change that from super major negativity to positivity, um, changes start happening in my life. And every time I've done that, when I start wanting to change from that negative whirlpool that I'm being sucked into, that I created, um, I start to get a glimmer of hope that it's going to get better, and then I do the things that Narcotics Anonymous tells me to do. I do the things that my sponsor tells me to do, and my life starts to change, and I start to emerge from that negativity, and all of a sudden, the grass is greener, and I'm excited that the grass is green instead of being pissed off that I have to mow the fucking grass. Uh, and my perception plays such a huge part in the way my life goes, because the way I perceive things is the way I then tend to react on them. And if I look at everything like like the grass, like shit, the grass is growing, I gotta cut it. Um, everything swirls around that negativity, and it just pulls me down. And it's a constant reminder that as an addict, that's what I do. I focus on negativity and think that it's like somehow in the back of my mind, I think that if I focus on that negativity long enough, it will change. But it never does. And I've lived so long, before I found recovery and then back and forth since I've been clean. So much of my life has been lived in that negativity that it's comfortable. And I get stuck. It's so nice to the last number of years, since I guess it was about 8, 9 years ago, I was living in Cincinnati, and my job had turned to shit, and my sponsor's job had turned to shit, and both of us would like talk 4 or 5 nights a week at least. And if it was a half-hour conversation, the first 15 minutes would be me bitching about how horrible my life and job was. And the next 15 minutes would be him bitching about how horrible his life and job was. And somehow by doing that and sharing it with somebody else, we both started to climb out of that dark place we'd gotten into. And those conversations changed, and we started to look ahead, and not necessarily plan or think that we were making the plan of what was going to happen in our life, but we had hope that it would get different, and we had hope that that different would be better. Uh, it's like we each grabbed a hold of each other, and I was pulling him up while he was pulling me up. And having people like that in my life, my sponsor, my sponsees, other friends I have in recovery, is is such a blessing. Um, I don't know. I often say when I'm so my sponsor's sponsor doesn't live where we do, so I most of the time give him his medallion, and I often say when I'm giving him his medallion that I have no fucking idea where I would be without him. I really don't, you know, and I know him. We've known each other for almost 40 years now, and we've both seen so many different parts of our lives, and we know each other for both our assets and our defects, and we both keep coming back and working on it and working on ourselves. And it's like every time I go to a meeting and share with people or answer the phone when a sponsee calls or answer the phone when any addict calls and listen. Um, being able to do that for people gives me hope that when I need it'll be there for me. And over the years, that hope has changed to faith that I'm going to be okay and everything's going to work out exactly the way it's supposed to. And I can try and screw that up as much as I want, and things will keep going if I keep doing the stuff that I'm supposed to do. I don't know. I thank you, Cam, for asking me to share. Um, I did exactly what you said I should do. Like what I tell you to do is not really think about it until it was time. And I almost missed thinking about it when it was time and forgot that I needed to pull over. And luckily, there's a good spot here with a good signal. So, but I think that's all I got. I love you guys. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.